Welcome to this survey on synthesizers. I want to first of all thank you for taking the time to take this survey. I'm here looking to explore the cognitive accessibility of synths and whether the user interfaces are helping us or hurting us in our, creative exploration of synth sounds. You can exit this survey at any time, and it's completely voluntary to participate. Although I believe user privacy to be adequately protected, please don't enter any information you wouldn't be comfortable sharing publicly. The tool I'm using is called Block Survey. I'm unable to use their so-called anonymous mode because some questions could be deemed personally identifiable data, such as open text fields where you can type in whatever you want. And so I implore you to consider what you're sharing and please visit their website for more information on their security practices. The data is, however, supposed to be end-to-end encrypted, meaning that only I have access to the survey data and not Block Survey themselves. But by participating, you are consenting to my use of this data, which I will at first be publishing and using in a school project for a class on cognitive accessibility and design, but I may use it for other purposes in the future, such as in my work portfolio or future design work. I have plans to present findings using a website, and my understanding is that Swedish university work is public data. So best practice is basically to understand what you type in or enter as public data. But I will never publish data in such a way that it can be tied to a specific individual. You can exit and come back later to finish the survey as long as you don't clear your cookie data. So let's get started. You can also select different languages up here if you would prefer to take the survey in a different language. But bear in mind that these are AI translated, uh, the AI translations of the survey, as I don't have the resources to uh, get proper translations. I believe them to be pretty good, but there's really no way for me to adequately ascertain that. But let's get started. So first of all, we simply type in how old we are. It's important to note here that you can go back and change a previous response. And then comes a question about how much you played a musical instrument. So the options, either you haven't played one or maybe at some point of your life you have, and maybe you've just tried it, or maybe you play it regularly. Then we add the music education you may have. Uh, None, everything from none to university, college degree, or PhD. So I have university, college education. And have you ever made music? Which is a simple yes and no. And this could be any kind of music creation. It doesn't have to be, you know, professional studio recordings or anything like that. Any kind of music creation, and acoustically, analog, digital, professional, amateur, doesn't matter. And for roughly how long have you been making music? I think for me it must be 20 plus at this point. And have you ever used a synthesizer? Which kind of synth have you used? Only physical hardware synths, which is then basically the ones you find IRL in real life, the the big physical hardware ones with all the knobs and the faders, or synths that you use as software on a computer. or maybe you've used both. And if you have used both, then you select which one you have the most experience with, or which you've used the most. So I've mostly used synths on a computer. What do you like about using physical hardware synths? And it's important to remember that there are no right answers here. Any thoughts that you have on this is very useful to me. But it is optional. So if you just want to skip these open text fields, you can. I personally, I like the tactile feel of knobs and faders. They help me change a lot of parameters very quickly. What do you like about using synths on a computer? And same thing here. Any thoughts you have on what you think is good about software synths and synths on a computer? Um, Feel free to type that in here. How often do you make your own sounds or modify existing sounds while using synths? Very often for me. And here you'll be presented with a grid of some of the most popular synthesizers on a computer. And if you don't find one that you've used among these, you simply don't tick any and just click next, in which case can type in one that you use. But you simply type in ones that you've used. So, in here, and you press next, and then it'll ask, follow up with you, of where you get to pick which have you used the most. So that would be faceplant. And then we enter a sort of second stage of the survey where you'll be asked a series of questions about your use of that specific synthesizer. So here it's how much have you used faceplant? Very little, a lot. And then again, these which have you used the most? I think that would be imagine. And how much have I used imagine? Very little. Eh, I've used it a little bit. You will basically be asked a bunch of questions about the synthesizers that you picked, and you have a scale from 1 to 5, where 1 is not at all and 5 is very much. So for example, I'm just going to put in some random responses to these here so you can see. But for example, how much do you enjoy using faceplant? Not at all, or very much. Has it been easy for you to explore many different ideas, options, designs, or outcomes using faceplant? And this can be said to, the emphasis here is on explore. If there is the synthesizer and the use of it conducive to um, exploring? Do you feel comfortable exploring different ideas? Can you keep track of different ideas? I'm just putting in random responses here, so I'm not really actually evaluating faceplant. To what extent would you use faceplant in a time-sensitive situation? And what do I mean with a time-sensitive situation? Well, it would basically be in cases where maybe you have a deadline and you got to get stuff done and you have specific sounds you want to create and you need the distance from point A to point B to be short, and is then in this case faceplant suitable for that. for you. And this is, this is completely subjective. For some people, faceplant may be that, and for some people, it may not be that. So just answer subjectively how you feel about it. Have the sounds you've been able to produce using faceplant been worth the effort? And so that's basically um, you know, an equation of the time spent and output. And do I feel like after all the time that I spent that I'm happy with what I got out of it? Have you been able to be very creative while making and modifying sounds in faceplant? Here the emphasis is on expressiveness. Uh, if you feel like you're able to express your ideas and express yourself using the synth. Do you feel engaged or immersed in the task of creating and modifying sounds while using faceplant? Here you could look at it as the flow state factor. Are you enjoying using the synth so much that you're kind of losing track of time and it's just, you know, it's just this flow of creative activity. And then you get to, it's optional, but you get to type in anything you want about what you like about the synth in question. And respectively, what do you dislike about it? And then you get the same run of questions, but with the second synth that you chose, if there was a second. And here we have a very general question about what would make you more likely to use a synth. And this could be anything, a different interface, a friendlier interface, hardware controller integration that gives you more tactile feel for what's going on, or maybe you need better learning resources, or maybe one-on-one teacher help. Anything that makes you more likely to use a synth, you can type in here. How would you rate your sensitivity to stress? This is optional, but it would be very interesting and see if there are any correlations here between sensitivity to stress and um, how we interact and feel about certain interfaces. Do you have any kind of cognitive impairment? Since the class, this is again optional, but it would be very appreciated if you would share this with the study. Do you have any kind of cognitive impairment? This is once again optional, but would be very helpful and interesting to have this data. And a cognitive impairment can be anything from attention issues, memory issues, an ADHD diagnosis, or intellectual impairments. Thank you.